Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie. I am the Introverted Reader, and today's video I am going to be doing a little sort of in-depth look at this book, Moonwalk by Michael Jackson. I mentioned the fact that I had read this back in July, and I said in my wrap-up that if y'all wanted me to do a more in-depth video about it, just, like that video and I would gladly do that. So you did, and I am. But what we're gonna do, this is gonna be sort of like a little mini series that I'm gonna do. So this is just part one. There's 6 chapters in this book. So in the first 3 chapters, so I'm gonna talk about the first 3 chapters in this video, and then our next video is gonna be the latter half of it here. So in this one, we're going to be talking about obviously the first 3 chapters, which covers the early days of Michael's career and the Jackson 5 and stuff like that. So I've bookmarked a few things that I might want to refer to, but you can sit up there, Daddy, if you want. Are you gonna? I don't know. He might not. Are you gonna? I don't know. It's a little jarring just having him stare at you, but it's okay. So obviously, y'all know Moonwalk by Michael Jackson is his one and only memoir that was released in 1988. And it's a book that says right here, his life in his words. So the first 3 chapters talk about Michael as a child, growing up with his siblings and his parents in Gary, Indiana. And growing up, and obviously Michael being handed a microphone at the age of 5, he didn't have exactly what was a normal childhood. Didn't exactly have a normal childhood, starting off so young. And if I may refer to the text, one particular part in the book where he sort of mentions it, he says, "I was so little when we began to work on our music that I really don't remember much about it. Most people have the luxury of careers that start when they're old enough to know exactly what they're doing and why, but of course that wasn't true for me. People make a lot of decisions concerning your life when you're out of the room, so here's what I remember. I remember singing at the top of my voice and dancing with real joy and working too hard for a child. Of course, there are many details I don't remember at all. I do remember the Jackson 5 really taking off when I was only 8 or 9. So, like I said, not very much of a normal childhood, starting so young at only 5 years old. And when you think about what you were maybe doing at 5 years old compared to what he was doing, it's really wow. And later on in the book, he talks about whenever they'd be at the studio and they'd be working, there was this park across the street, and he would just be looking at all the children playing in the park and thinking, wow, I cannot imagine doing all that. He couldn't imagine having such a carefree life and running around and everything, because he said that most of what his childhood was work, which a little sad. But then again, he goes on to say that he wouldn't change it for anything. He loved what he did, but at the same time, he felt like he missed out on so much, And finding real friends for him was obviously really hard. I wanted to show y'all. Look at him. Imagine being handed a microphone, imagine singing it, look at him. Isn't he so cute? Anyway, so then hold on, sorry if I read my own writing, I'm looking at my notes. So then he goes on in this chapter to talk about his family life in Gary, and just 2 normal working parents. His dad worked at the steel mill, his mom worked at a department store, and they're just normal family growing up in Indiana, and literally coming from that, to obviously where they are now. And Joseph seeing that his sons all had talent, and obviously that Michael could sing, and getting them instruments and showing them how to play them, and giving them microphones and stuff, and showing them that these guitars and these amplifiers and the microphones, these aren't toys. We're not playing a game here. We're taking this serious. And taking them on taking them around, Indiana and Chicago and beyond and stuff like that, to bars and strip clubs and everything. And they're and Michael talks about that quite a lot, talking about there would be strippers performing on stage, or a drag queen would come on and do a number, and they'd just be watching all of this going down, and then these 5 kids would come onto the stage and then play a song. It's It's crazy. I could not imagine doing that. And then going from, you know, all the clubs and bars and everything all the way up to the Apollo, and then obviously getting more and more attention and people talking about them. And then I realize I'm glazing over a lot, but if you want more detail, read the book. If you want more detail, read it. But then obviously skipping on to them getting the call to audition for Motown Records. Now, like, Motown was like when they really like shot off, because you know they had their audition with Berry Gordy, and then obviously they passed, and him saying to them, your first record's gonna be #1, your second record's gonna be #1, and then your third is gonna be #1. I'm gonna make sure you get 3 #1 records in a row. And they did. You know, he kept his promise, and you know, getting more and more popularity and going on tour. And the reality of their fame really hit them, because he talks about like them going to England, and the pilot saying over the thing that like they had to be careful when they land, or they had to like delay their landing or something, because there was so many fans at the airport that it was getting a bit dangerous. But like, wow, cannot like just imagine like flying in and then being told that you're in danger once we land at the airport, because there's so many people there at the airport to greet you, you know. And sorry, oh yeah, so Michael, of course, being the star in front of everything, taking everything in. And like I said, they'd be at the Apollo Theater, or they'd be anywhere else, and he'd be seeing like pictures of all the greats on the wall. And he talks about how he would look at like Jackie Wilson and Fred Astaire, and obviously James Brown. You know, like I would say James Brown was probably his biggest inspiration. Like he'd be watching him on TV all the time. You know, those three: James Robinson, Jackie Wilson, and Fred Astaire. 100% absolutely. And if you look back at some like older footage of like Michael as a teenager dancing on TV, or even him as a kid, or even him as he was older, you might see some like Fred Astaire type movements in there. So, because I actually saw a video a while ago of him doing this tap dance number. I think he was a teenager. He was like 17 or something. And he had like a top hat on, whole tuxedo and the tails and everything. And he was getting it. Like I was living. And like I said, he'd be watching all of these greats and like wanting to apply that to, you know, his own work, and you know, the way he performed. And also in the 3rd chapter, we'll talk about chapter 3. You know, he talks about himself and oh yeah, you know, himself and his brothers, and like whilst they had a great time with Motown and they had amazing memories, you know, with Motown, and he loved Berry Gordy, because they even stayed at like Berry Gordy's house and Diana Ross's house as well, because the two of them sort of lived on the same street. So some of them would live with Berry, some live with Diana, and obviously he had a great connection with her. We'll not get into her right now. And then so anyway, I think he mentions that there are problems with Motown, if I have it bookmarked here. Oh yeah. He says, our problems with Motown began around 1974, when we told them in no uncertain terms that we wanted to write and produce our own songs. Basically, we didn't like the way our music sounded at the time. We had a strong competitive urge, and we felt we were in danger of being eclipsed by other groups who were creating a more contemporary sound. And Motown were like, flat out, no, that's not happening. You know, we have songwriters and producers that will do all of that for you. You just get up there and sing. And they were like, no, we don't want to do that. You know, we're artists. You know, we want to be able to, you know, write the songs we want to sing, produce them ourselves, and, you know, do all our, like, they wanted their own sound. They know they didn't want to be in the box anymore. And in the end, it came down to Michael himself having to go to Berry Gordy's office and sit and have that conversation with him, you know, about like, you know what, we love you and we've loved our time here, but if we're not able to have full creative control over our work, then we're gonna have to leave. You know, they didn't want to, but they had to. And like, it wasn't like, and Michael says in the book that like, if it was just him that was unhappy, he wouldn't have said anything. But his all the brothers were unhappy, and they had many conversations about how unhappy they were. And it was just like, you know what, I'm gonna have to do it, you know, which I felt like, which doesn't, like, for me doesn't really seem right. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm just like, you're gonna leave it up to him, you know, that a child still to go and have this awkward conversation with Barry when it should be one of you grown-ups, but you know, whatever. And you know, obviously, and as well at that stage, there's a lot of personal stuff going on as well, and he talks about like how his, obviously hitting puberty, he'd hit puberty, you know, and he wasn't, you know, a little boy anymore. He was a tall gangly teenager with pimples, and you know how that made him feel really really insecure, and he'd avoid the mirror. And his brother Marlon would have the bad skin as well, but he didn't care. But like, whereas Michael was just, God bless him. I think I have a bookmarked here. Oh yeah, I'd almost forgot about that. My brother Marlon would be covered in pimples and he wouldn't care, but I didn't want to see anybody, and I didn't want anyone to see my skin in that shape. It makes you wonder what makes us the way we are, that two brothers could be so different. I still had our hit records to be proud of, and once I hit the stage, I didn't think about anything else. All that worry was gone. But once I came off stage, there was that mirror to face once again. And he says that like he'd avoid the mirror. He would hardly want to even look at anyone in the eye, you know, like anybody coming over to have a conversation with him. He'd just look down, be like, don't look at me, don't look at me. You know, there's all that going on, and also the problems with Motown as well, and them just wanting to, a lot of changes, a lot of changes, you know, for Michael personally, and, you know, in his career as well. And then all of them bar Jermaine, because Jermaine was actually married to Barry Gordy's daughter, so he chose to stay with Motown whilst the rest of the brothers left. And that was hard on them, especially Michael, because him and Jermaine were really close, and Jermaine was always on this side of him when they were performing. So that took a lot of adjusting. But then they went to Epic, and you know, things were starting to progress for them there. And then later on, Michael's in his like late teens, coming to like his early 20s, and you know, he gets the word that they are making the movie The Wiz, and Diana Ross is going to be playing Dorothy, although it should have been given to Stephanie Mills. We all know that, but that's a different conversation. And then it was all like, he ended up auditioning for the role of the Scarecrow. So, you know, going on there and doing The Wiz, and if you haven't watched it, you should, because Michael was an amazing actor. And then on the set of The Wiz was where he met Quincy Jones. And that is where we'll finish off. That is where we'll finish off for this. I really hope y'all enjoyed this, because I was a bit nervous putting this together. I was sitting writing my notes last night, and I was like, if these don't really make any sense, it doesn't really make any sense. But y'all know already how much I love this man. Y'all know I'll talk about him till I'm blue in the face. So if you enjoyed this, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And you know, leave a comment, I guess, if you want, or leave your favorite emoji in the comments. So yeah, I'll love yous and leave yous. All my socials are down there. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell, leave a like, do all the things. And I'll see y'all in part 2 of our little Moonwalk in-depth. So I'll see you later. Bye.